Hour, you'd expect an uproar when a town finds out that dozens of Guantanamo Bay prisoners could be transferred to a prison in their own backyard. But that's not the case in Thomson, Illinois, where the prevailing attitude seems to be, bring it on.
I love this idea. I love it. Open it up. Bring in some workers.
It's been kind of rough here the last few years, and this would be awful good for the community.
Well, the transfer of about 100 Gitmo prisoners to the Thomson prison could bring a lot of new jobs and also a much-needed jolt to the local economy, but it could also bring a new kind of threat. Joining me now, Representative Donald Manzullo. He is a Republican who represents the Thomson district. Good morning, Congressman. Nice to see you this morning.
Good morning, Karen. How are you today?
Great, thanks. Well, you know, you've heard those people that we just heard from there talking about how they think it would be just fine if the Guantanamo Bay prisoners... If at least some of them came to the jail in your area. But you're against it. Explain why.
That's not what they said. They said it'd be great if the prison were open. That prison was built several years ago at a cost of $140 million, and the people of that area fully anticipated and expected that that prison would open with state of Illinois prisoners. The state of Illinois, based upon the economic analysis set forth by the White House, would have more than enough revenues in increased sales tax and increased income tax in order to open up that prison on its own as a standalone without having to worry about the Gitmo detainees coming in. So the people want work. I've always been in favor of opening up as an Illinois facility for its intended purpose, or we've been in contact with the Department of Corrections for years saying, look, if you're not going to operate as an Illinois facility, at least lease it or sell it to the federal government to open it up as a prison.
Right. But
so we're all in
just be
favor of
clear
economic development taking place there.
Let's just be clear for a minute, because the people that we spoke with, that we just showed, were specifically asked about it. In fact, one of the quotes from one woman, she's a 43-year-old waitress, she said, it doesn't bother me that there's going to be terrorists there. Murderers are here. Terrorists are murderers. What's the difference? If it brings people into the community, I'm fine with it.
There's a big difference. First of all, nobody in that facility will ever get out. We're not worried about people escaping. But I share the sentiment of Governor Sebelius of Kansas, Senator Jim Webb, and Senator Joe Lieberman. When Governor Sebelius, who's now the head of HHS, was asked to bring the prisoners to, the terrorists to Leavenworth, she wrote a letter successfully to President Obama and said, look, we don't want these people here because they will essentially create a magnet or a lightning rod to bring in their like kind from all over the world, thus creating a threat to the community as a whole, even though they would not be able to escape. What we've been trying to do in the seminal question that I've been asking over and over and over again is this: if the reason for Gitmo being closed is that it serves as a focal point of hatred towards the United States, and this is what the White House said yesterday in their communique, that it's hated so much it's used as a recruiting tool. If Gitmo is moved to the United States, which it is, it's not being closed, it's being moved, will that hatred transfer to Thomson, Illinois, which is surrounded by melon fields, hay, corn, and soybean, as opposed to Gitmo, which is surrounded by water and sharks?
No, I understand what you're saying, but...
But that's the seminal issue. The
difference is that supporters of closing it argue is that they're just being held indefinitely without a trial or without the hope of getting one. In this situation, they would be getting lawyers and they would be getting ready to perhaps get ready for either a civilian or a military trial. But I want to ask you...
Wait, Kieran, just a second. That's not correct. The people that will be sent to Gitmo, from Gitmo to the state of Illinois by the federal government, would not get either a trial in the federal courts or a military tribunal. Of the 215 people at Gitmo now, approximately 40 are ready for those types of trial. 90 are ready to be sent back to their homeland, but they're so dangerous the homeland won't take them. So that's a big distinction as to who they are. It's important because these are the most incorrigible of the incorrigible. They would serve as a magnet, and that's what Governor Sebelius was worried about.
Well, I understand your concerns, absolutely. One of the things, though, is that there are other blueprints for this taking place relatively successfully. Take, for example, the Supermax facility right now in Florence, Colorado.
No, that's not, again,
Let me just finish. They have Zacharias Moussaoui there. He was convicted of conspiring the terrorist attack. They have the shoe bomber, Richard Reed. They have Ramzi Youssef. They've handled a very large number of dangerous prisoners, and they say they've had no harm to the local communities. What's the difference?
All right. Here's the difference. There are about 340 so-called international and domestic terrorists, according to Harvey Lappin, who's the head of Bureau of Prisons. DOJ, other people say there are about 217. There are about of all those people, most are already mainstream with the federal prisoners. That leaves about 120, with 30 to 40 in Supermax, in Marion, Illinois, and in Terre Haute, Indiana. But among that 120, you probably have 10 to 15 that have international ties. So that's the distinction. This is comparing apples to oranges. Sure, no one's going to break out, but you don't have that sense of magnet because of Gitmo being moved from Gitmo Bay to a place in this country. You cannot compare those two. In fact, there was an article in the Washington Post on November 29th dealing with a person who's detained at Gitmo from Yemen. And his brother said that, look, we thought when President Obama was going to close Gitmo that the people would be released. He said, but if these people are sent to the United States and imprisoned there, it's going to make the people of Yemen have even hate the Americans even more and even increase the level of violence.
All right,
that's the issue.
I know you feel passionately about the situation, and still.
Well, I'm speaking factually. Yeah. It's important to realize that you cannot compare people who are incarcerated in this country today with the people that will be coming in from Gitmo. It's apples and oranges.
All right. Well, again, we don't have time to argue all of the points of this, but I appreciate your point of view, and thanks for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
Congressman Manzullo.